The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a metal cathedral. 12 different species sat in curved rows, their eyes fixed on the single human sitting at the center. Dr. Elena Vasquez pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders. The air was cold, but not as cold as the stares she received. Ambassador Zekthara rose from the prosecutor's bench. The tall, blue-skinned Velthari moved with careful steps toward the center of the room. His voice echoed through the chamber when he spoke. Council members, we gather today to discuss a threat to galactic peace. 3 months ago, we made contact with a species called humans. Since then, we have studied them carefully. What we found troubles us deeply. Elena watched as holographic images appeared above the chamber. Pictures of Earth floated in the air, cities, people, and scenes from human history. Her home planet looked beautiful from space, but she knew the aliens saw something different. This species shows levels of violence never seen in our galaxy, Zekthara continued. Their planet has never known true peace. War follows war in an endless cycle. Their entertainment celebrates violence. Their stories glorify death and destruction. More images appeared. Battle scenes from movies, boxing matches, football games where players crashed into each other. Elena felt her heart sink as she watched the council members react. The plant-like Zenthari pulled their leaves closer to their bodies. The insect-like Quexari clicked their mandibles in distress. Look at their sports, Zekthara said, pointing to a hockey fight. They gather in crowds to watch beings hurt each other. They cheer when blood is spilled. They call this entertainment. Elena started to stand, but the Arbiter Supreme held up a hand. The ancient Kolvith looked like a cross between a tree and a wise old man. His voice was deep and patient. Let the prosecutor finish, Dr. Vasquez. You will have your chance to speak. Zekthara smiled, showing sharp teeth. Thank you, Arbiter. As I was saying, human violence is not limited to their entertainment. Their literature is filled with murder, war, and death. Stories about killing monsters, fighting enemies, destroying entire worlds. Even their children's tales involve violence. The hologram showed book covers, action novels, war stories, fantasy books with swords and dragons. Elena wanted to explain that these were just stories, but she stayed quiet. Their history is perhaps most damning, Zekthara said. We found records going back thousands of years. Not a single decade of true peace. Always fighting, always killing, always at war. Sometimes they fight other species. When they cannot find others to fight, they fight each other. Images of human wars flashed above them. Ancient battles, medieval sieges, modern conflicts. Elena saw the council members grow more uncomfortable with each picture. They have weapons that could destroy their entire planet, Zekthara continued. Not only do they build such weapons, but they build thousands of them. What species creates enough weapons to kill themselves many times over? A Zenthari council member spoke up. Her voice was soft and melodic, like wind through leaves. Surely they must have some peaceful activities? Zekthara nodded. Yes, Council Member Thyasa. But even their peaceful activities have roots in violence. Their music often speaks of war, loss, and death. Their art shows battles and suffering. Their games simulate combat and conquest. Elena felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on her. How could she explain that humans were more than just their violent history? How could she make them understand? Members of the Council, Zekthara said, we must consider the safety of all galactic citizens. This species has shown us who they are through their own actions and choices. They are violent by nature. They celebrate destruction. They cannot exist among peaceful species without bringing chaos. The Quexari representative buzzed loudly. What does the prosecutor recommend? Quarantine, Zekthara said simply. We must contain them to their own system. Perhaps in a few thousand years, they might evolve past their violent nature. Until then, they are too dangerous to contact other species. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Elena felt 12 sets of alien eyes looking at her. Some showed fear, others disgust. A few showed what might have been pity. Arbiter Supreme Kolveth spoke slowly. Dr. Vasquez, you may now present humanity's defense. The Council will listen with open minds. Elena stood up, her legs shaking slightly. She looked around the chamber at beings from across the galaxy. Each species was so different from humans, from each other. How could she bridge such a gap? Honored Council members, she began. I understand why you fear my species. The evidence looks damning. But I ask you to remember that evidence without context can mislead us. What looks like mindless violence might have deeper meaning. Zekthara laughed. Context? Dr. Vasquez, we have studied thousands of hours of human behavior. The context is clear. Humans enjoy violence. Elena felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced it down. Getting angry would only prove their point. She needed to stay calm, to think clearly. I request time to present our true nature, she said. Not through words alone, but through actions. Give me the chance to show you who humans really are. The council members whispered among themselves in various languages. Finally, Kolveth nodded. Very well, Dr. Vasquez. You have 3 days to prepare your defense. The council will reconvene to hear your evidence. But know this. The burden of proof lies with you. You must convince us that humanity deserves a place among galactic civilization. As the council members filed out, Elena remained standing in the empty chamber. 3 days to save her entire species. 3 days to explain the complexity of human nature to beings who might never understand. She thought of Earth, of her family, of billions of people who had no idea their fate was being decided in a room far from home. She would not let them down. The second day of hearings began, with the chamber filled to capacity. Word had spread throughout the galactic community about the human trial. Representatives from dozens of species crowded into the viewing galleries. Elena noticed that many kept their distance from her, as if violence might be contagious. Zekthara stood at the prosecutor's bench, looking confident. He had spent the night preparing more evidence against humanity. The first hologram that appeared showed a boxing match. Observe, he said. How humans gather in large groups to watch two of their own beat each other unconscious. Notice the crowd's reaction when blood appears. They become more excited, not less. The alien audience watched in horror as the boxer's nose broke, spraying blood across the ring. The human crowd in the recording cheered loudly. Several Zenthari in the viewing gallery made sick sounds. Elena tried to explain. This is sport, honored council. The fighters choose to participate. They train for years. There are rules to protect them. Protect them? Zekthara asked. Dr. Vasquez, we just watched one human deliberately damage another's face. How is this protection? The rules prevent serious injury, Elena said. Referees stop the fight if someone gets hurt badly. Medical teams stand ready to help. The Quexari representative clicked its mandibles. So humans hurt each other just enough to be entertaining, but not enough to die? This makes it worse. Not better. Elena felt her first explanation failing. Zekthara smiled and brought up the next piece of evidence. Human literature. Their books and stories reveal their true nature, he said. Look at their most popular tales. The hologram showed covers of best-selling novels. War stories, crime thrillers, fantasy adventures with sword fights. Every story needs conflict, Elena began. But Zekthara cut her off. Not conflict, Dr. Vasquez, violence. We studied 100 of your most beloved stories. 97 contained death. 85 contained war. 72 showed graphic descriptions of killing. Council member Thiasa, of the Zenthari, spoke softly. Dr. Vasquez, why would a peaceful species create stories about murder and war? Our children's tales speak of growth, cooperation, and harmony. Elena thought of fairy tales. Little Red Riding Hood, with its big bad wolf, Hansel and Gretel with the witch in the oven. How could she explain that these stories taught children about danger and courage? Our stories prepare children for a dangerous world, she said. They teach important lessons about good and evil, about protecting the innocent. By showing them violence? Asked Quexari. We teach our young about danger through education, not by showing them death. Zekthara brought up more evidence. Human history shows a species that cannot live in peace. We found records of over 15,000 wars in just the last 5,000 years. They fight over land, resources, ideas, even which invisible being to worship. The hologram showed battle after battle. Ancient armies clashing with swords, medieval sieges, modern warfare with terrible weapons. Elena watched the council members grow more frightened with each image. Sometimes they fight for survival, Elena said desperately. When invaders attack, people must defend themselves. But look closer, Zekthara said. Half of these wars were not defensive. Humans attacked others to take their land, their wealth, their freedom. They conquered and enslaved entire civilizations. Elena could not deny this. Human history was full of terrible wars fought for greed and power. How could she explain that humanity had also learned from these mistakes? We have grown beyond those dark times, she said. Modern humans work together more than ever before. Zekthara laughed. Modern humans still fight wars, Dr. Vasquez. When we first observed Earth, you had active conflicts on 3 continents. You still build weapons. You still train soldiers. The prosecutor brought up his final piece of evidence. Human, entertainment, beyond, sports, movies filled with explosions, video games where players shot enemies, music with violent lyrics. Even their relaxation involves simulated violence, he said. They pay money to watch fake people die in elaborate ways. They spend hours pretending to kill digital opponents. They sing songs about murder and revenge. Elena watched action movie clips play above the chamber. Explosions, car chases, shootouts. She realized how it must look to species that had never known violence. It's fantasy, she said weakly. It's not real violence. People know the difference. Do they? Zekthara asked. If someone constantly fills their mind with violent images, how does this not affect their behavior? A new voice spoke from the council. It was Representative Mordek of the Kithera, a species known for their logical thinking. Dr. Vasquez, we have reviewed your evidence about human nature. You speak of protection and defense, but the data shows aggression and conquest. You mention rules in your sports, but the goal is still to hurt the opponent. You claim your stories teach lessons, but the lessons always involve violence as the solution. Elena felt trapped. Every explanation she gave seemed to make things worse. The aliens saw violence and assumed evil intent. They could not understand the difference between controlled violence and chaos. Perhaps, said Arbiter Kolveth gently, you could help us understand through a different approach. Dr. Vasquez, your words alone do not seem sufficient to explain human nature. Elena looked around the chamber at faces filled with fear and disgust. She had one day left. One chance to show them that humans were more than their worst impulses. I request permission to demonstrate human behavior rather than simply describe it, she said. What kind of demonstration? Asked Thiasa. Let me show you how humans actually behave when faced with real situations. Not sports, not entertainment, not stories, real life. Zekthara objected. Arbiter, this is highly unusual. The defendant should not be allowed to stage performances to distract from the evidence. Kolveth considered this. Dr. Vasquez, do you propose to bring humans here to perform for us? No, Elena said. I propose to show you recorded examples of human behavior in natural situations. Unscripted, unplanned, real reactions to real events. Very well, Kolveth decided. Tomorrow you may present these recordings. But remember, Dr. Vasquez, you have shown us much about human nature already through your own words and reactions. Choose your evidence carefully. As the council adjourned, Elena realized what he meant. She had been defensive, argumentative, even angry during the proceedings. To the aliens, she was proving their point about human aggression just by defending her species. Elena spent the night preparing her new strategy. She realized that explaining human nature with words had failed completely. The aliens interpreted everything through their own peaceful experiences. To them, any violence was evil, any conflict was wrong. She needed to show them, not tell them. The third day began differently. Elena stood calmly at the defense podium, no longer trying to argue or explain. She had asked the council's technical staff to prepare several recordings from Earth's communication networks. Honored Council, she began, I will not try to convince you with words today. Instead, I ask you to simply observe human behavior and draw your own conclusions. Arbiter Kolveth nodded approvingly. Proceed, Dr. Vasquez. The first recording began. It showed a burning apartment building. Thick black smoke poured from broken windows. People ran from the building, coughing and scared. Then the recording focused on a small group of humans running toward the fire, not away from it. These are firefighters, Elena said simply. Watch what they do. Then, the aliens watched in confusion as the humans entered the burning building. The camera followed them as they searched through smoke-filled rooms. They found an elderly man trapped under fallen debris. Without hesitation, they lifted the heavy beams and carried him to safety. Why do they enter the dangerous area? Asked a Quexari representative. Elena did not answer. She let the recording continue. The firefighters went back into the building, again and again. They saved a family with young children. They rescued a trapped pet. One firefighter collapsed from smoke inhalation, but his teammates carried him out and immediately returned to save others. The next recording showed a different scene. A river had flooded, trapping people on rooftops. Again, some humans ran toward the danger. They used boats to reach the stranded people. When the boats were not enough, they formed human chains, linking hands in the rushing water to pull people to safety. They risked drowning to save strangers, whispered Thyasa. Elena showed more recordings. Humans digging through earthquake rubble to find survivors. Humans jumping into frozen lakes to save drowning children. Humans running toward gunfire to help wounded people. In every case, some humans moved toward danger, while others moved away. Observe their faces, Elena said quietly. Do these look like beings who enjoy violence? The council watched closely. The humans in the recordings looked afraid, but determined. They were clearly scared, but they acted anyway. Some were crying as they worked. Others shook from fear or exhaustion. None looked happy about the danger. Zekthara stood to object. These are trained professionals, Dr. Vasquez. They are paid to take these risks. Are they? Elena asked. She showed the council information about volunteer firefighters, rescue workers who received no payment. She showed ordinary citizens who helped in emergencies with no training and no reward. The next recording showed something different. A school cafeteria where children were eating lunch. Suddenly, several older, bigger children began picking on a smaller child. They pushed him down, took his food, and laughed at him. Finally, Zekthara said, we see human nature revealed. But Elena let the recording continue. Other children saw what was happening. One by one, they stood up. They moved between the bullies and their victim. They helped the smaller child up. They shared their own food with him. The bullies, outnumbered, walked away. Some humans hurt others, Elena said. But watch. Other humans always step in to stop them. She showed more examples. Store customers stopping thieves, neighbors protecting each other during riots, soldiers risking their lives to save wounded enemies. In every case, when some humans chose violence, other humans chose to protect the innocent. Representative Mordek of the Kythera spoke thoughtfully. Dr. Vasquez, you show us that humans have both destructive and protective impulses. But this does not resolve our concerns about their violent nature. You're right, Elena agreed. Humans are capable of violence, but look at when they choose it. She showed recordings of humans fighting, but now the context was clear. Parents defending children from attackers, police officers stopping criminals, soldiers protecting civilians from invaders. In every case, violence was used to protect someone weaker. Violence for protection is still violence, Zekthara argued. A peaceful species finds non-violent solutions. Elena paused the recordings. What non-violent solution would you suggest for a mother whose child is being attacked by a predator? The council fell silent. They had no answer. Your species, Elena continued, have been fortunate. The Zenthari evolved on a world with no predators. The Quex Ari developed in hives where cooperation was automatic. The Velthari achieved peace through technology. But humans evolved differently. She showed recordings of Earth's dangerous wildlife. Lions, sharks, bears, venomous snakes. Our world was full of creatures that could kill us. We had to learn to fight back, or we would have died out completely. But surely you could have avoided these creatures, suggested Thyasa. Elena showed more recordings. Early humans, protecting their children from wild animals. Farmers defending their crops from pests. Villages working together to survive harsh winters and natural disasters. We could have hidden, Elena said. But then the weak would have died. The young, the old, the sick. They all needed protection. So humans learned to fight when necessary, not because we enjoyed it, but because the alternative was watching innocents suffer. The recordings changed to show modern examples. Humans feeding hungry people, building shelters for the homeless, caring for abandoned animals. Medical teams traveling to dangerous areas to treat the sick. We still protect the weak, Elena said. We still risk ourselves for others. Not because we are violent, but because we are protective. Arbiter Kolveth leaned forward. Dr. Vasquez, these recordings are impressive, but they show individual humans making good choices. What about your species as a whole? Your wars? Your weapons? Your violent entertainment? Elena had saved the most important recordings for last. She showed footage of humans helping disaster victims in foreign countries. Enemy soldiers sharing medical supplies. Former enemies working together to build peace. Our wars taught us the cost of violence, she said. Our weapons exist to protect our peaceful neighbors. Our violent entertainment lets us experience conflict safely, without real harm. She paused and looked around the chamber. Honored Council, you fear humanity because we are capable of violence. But consider this. We are the only species here that has ever had to choose between violence and peace. Every day, millions of humans make that choice. Most choose peace, not because they cannot fight, but because they choose not to. The chamber was quiet as the recordings ended. The council members sat in thought, their earlier certainty shaken by what they had seen. The fourth day began with a changed atmosphere in the chamber. The council members spoke in hushed whispers, no longer looking at Elena with pure fear. Some seemed confused, others thoughtful. The recordings from the previous day had clearly affected them. Elena felt cautiously hopeful as she took her position. She had prepared more evidence, more examples of human protective instincts. But before she could begin, alarms started blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed on the chamber walls. An automated voice spoke in the common galactic language. Structural emergency in Council Chamber 7. All personnel evacuate immediately. The ceiling above them began to crack. A support beam groaned under stress, then snapped with a sound like thunder. Chunks of metal and concrete crashed down onto the chamber floor. Several Xanthari delegates, sitting in the lower rows, were caught beneath the falling debris. Panic filled the chamber. Most aliens ran toward the exits, their survival instincts taking over. The Quexari buzzed in alarm. The Velthari moved quickly but calmly toward safety. Even some council members abandoned their posts to flee. But Elena did not run. She leaped over the rail, separating the defense area from the main floor. Behind her, she heard the 3 human security guards who had accompanied her to the trial doing the same. While hundreds of aliens fled toward the exits, 4 humans ran toward the danger. The largest piece of debris had trapped 3 Xanthari delegates. Their plant-like bodies were pinned under a massive steel beam. Green fluid leaked from their wounds, the Xanthari equivalent of blood. They cried out in their melodic language, voices filled with pain. Elena reached them first. The beam was easily twice her weight, far too heavy for one person to lift, but she did not hesitate. She grabbed one end and pulled with all her strength. The beam shifted slightly, but not enough. "Help me!" she shouted to the security guards. Lieutenant Rodriguez reached her first. He was a young man, barely out of training. Behind him came Sergeant Collins, a veteran with gray hair and scars from old battles. The third guard, Corporal Kim, ran to check on other injured aliens. "On 3, Elena said. 1, 2, 3. The 4 humans lifted together. The beam was still incredibly heavy, but they managed to raise it enough for the Xanthari to crawl out. Elena felt something pull in her shoulder. Rodriguez's hands were bleeding from the rough metal, but they did not let go until all 3 aliens were free. The chamber was nearly empty now, except for emergency crews rushing in. Elena knelt beside the most badly injured Xanthari, Council Member Thyasa. 1 centi, 1 centi, 1 centi, 1 centi, 1 centi, 1 centi. The gentle being who had asked questions about human violence now lay broken and bleeding. "Stay still," Elena said softly, not knowing if Thyasa could understand her. "Help is coming." Thyasa's large eyes focused on Elena's face. She tried to speak, but only managed a whisper. Elena leaned closer to hear. "Why?" Thyasa asked weakly. "Why help us? We wanted to exile you." Elena felt tears in her eyes. "Because you needed help," she said simply. "That's what humans do." Medical teams arrived and took over caring for the injured. Elena stood back, watching as alien doctors worked to save Thyasa and the others. Her shoulder throbbed where she had strained it lifting the beam. Her hands were cut from the sharp metal. But all she could think about was whether the Xanthari would survive. As the immediate emergency passed, Elena became aware that she was being watched. She turned to see dozens of aliens staring at her, and the human security team. These were the aliens who had stayed to help with the emergency, council members, staff, even some from the viewing galleries. Arbiter Kolveth stepped forward. The ancient being looked at Elena with new eyes. "Dr. Vasquez," he said slowly, "you had every reason to let those delegates die. They have spent 3 days condemning your species. They voted to exile humanity. Yet you risked your life to save them." Elena wiped blood from her hands on her jacket. They were hurt. Nothing else mattered. "But they are not your species," pressed Representative Mordek. "They are not your family or friends. Logic suggests you should prioritize your own safety." Sergeant Collins spoke up. "With respect, sir, that's not how humans work. Someone needed help. We helped. Simple as that." A Quexari who had witnessed the rescue buzzed loudly. But you could have been killed. The structure might have collapsed further. Lieutenant Rodriguez shrugged. Maybe, but we couldn't just leave them there. Elena saw understanding beginning to dawn on alien faces. For 3 days, they had heard descriptions of human violence. They had seen recordings of human conflicts. But now, they had witnessed human nature firsthand. Zekthara approached slowly. The prosecutor who had demanded humanity's exile looked shaken. Dr. Vasquez, I must ask you something. When you saw the Zenthari trapped, what was your first thought? Elena considered the question honestly. I thought they were going to die if someone didn't help them. I didn't think about anything else. You did not consider that saving them might help your case? You did not think about the political advantage? No, Elena said firmly. I just saw people who needed help. Zekthara stared at her for a long moment. In 3 days of legal proceedings, you have been defensive, argumentative, even angry at times. You showed typical human aggression in your responses to our accusations. But when faced with real danger, your first instinct was to protect others, even your enemies. Oh. He turned to address the remaining council members. I have prosecuted many cases before this tribunal. I have seen species lie, manipulate, and deceive to save themselves. But I have never seen a defendant risk their life to save their accusers. Medical teams reported that all the injured Zenthari would recover. The Asa was stable but would need weeks of treatment. As she was moved to the medical bay, she reached out weakly toward Elena. Thank you, she whispered. I understand now. As the chamber was cleared for repairs, Elena found herself surrounded by alien witnesses to the rescue. They asked questions, trying to understand what they had seen. Was this behavior typical for humans? Asked one. Would most humans have done the same? Asked another. Elena thought about her answer carefully. Not all humans are heroes, she said. But most would have helped if they could. It's just who we are. That evening, as Elena sat in her quarters, nursing her injured shoulder, she realized something had fundamentally changed. For the first time in 4 days, she felt hope. The aliens had finally seen humans as they truly were. Not perfect, not peaceful, but protective of those who needed protection. Tomorrow would bring the final day of the trial, but Elena knew the real judgment had already been made in those crucial minutes when debris fell and humans ran toward danger instead of away from it. The final day of the trial was held in a different chamber, while the damaged one was being repaired. Elena noticed that the atmosphere had completely changed. The aliens no longer avoided looking at her. Some even nodded respectfully as she entered. The Asa was there, supported by medical equipment, but determined to participate. Her near-death experience had not dampened her desire to see the trial through to its conclusion. If anything, she seemed more focused than before. Arbiter Kolveth called the session to order. We gather for the final proceedings in the matter of humanity's place in galactic civilization. Dr. Vasquez, you may present your closing arguments. Elena stood slowly, still feeling the pain in her shoulder from the previous day's rescue. She looked around the chamber at faces that no longer showed fear or disgust. Instead, she saw confusion, curiosity, and something that might have been respect. Honored Council, she began. 3 days ago, you saw evidence that humans are violent. That evidence was true. We are capable of great violence. We have fought terrible wars. We have weapons that could destroy worlds. We do enjoy competitive sports and violent entertainment. Murmurs of confusion rose from the gallery. Elena was agreeing with the prosecution's case. But yesterday, you saw something else. You saw humans choose to risk their lives for aliens who had condemned them. You saw us act without thinking, without calculating advantage, without considering reward. You saw what humans do when no one is watching and judging. She gestured toward the viewing area where several witnesses to the rescue sat. These beings saw our true nature, not our capacity for violence, but our compulsion to protect. And that is the key to understanding humanity. Elena activated a holographic display showing Earth from space. Every species represented in this council evolved under different conditions. The Zenthari grew in peaceful gardens, where cooperation brought success. The Quexari developed in hives where individual violence would destroy the whole community. The Velthari achieved peace through technology that made violence obsolete. The display changed to show Earth's harsh environment: predators, hunting prey, natural disasters, destroying settlements, harsh weather, killing the unprepared. Humans evolved in a world that was trying to kill us every day. We survived not because we were the strongest or fastest, but because we learned to protect each other. A human alone dies quickly on Earth. Humans together can survive anything. Elena paused as she saw understanding beginning to appear on alien faces. Our violence always has a purpose. We fight to protect our families. We train for war to defend our homes. We build weapons to guard our people. Even our entertainment serves this purpose. It teaches us to recognize threats and respond to danger. Zekthara stood up. Dr. Vasquez, even if we accept that human violence is protective, it remains violence. How can we trust beings who solve problems through force? Because we don't, Elena said firmly. Watch us closely. Humans always try other solutions first. We negotiate, we compromise, we build relationships. We only use force when everything else fails and innocents are threatened. She brought up recordings of human diplomacy, peace treaties, and international cooperation. We have learned that violence is a last resort, not a first choice. Our history shows us moving away from conflict, not toward it. Representative Mordek asked, "But what about your weapons? Why build so many if you prefer peace?" Elena smiled sadly. Because we know that not everyone prefers peace. Earth taught us that predators exist. If we disarm completely, we cannot protect those who depend on us. The Asa spoke weakly from her medical chair. Dr. Vasquez, I need to understand something. Yesterday, when you saved us, you were hurt in the process. Your hands were bleeding, your shoulder was injured. Yes, Elena said. It hurt quite a bit. But you continued anyway? Yes. Why? Your pain served no purpose. Helping us served no purpose for you, personally. Elena considered how to explain this concept to beings who had never faced such choices. On Earth, we have a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. Humans are not the strongest or smartest species, but we can endure pain for others. That ability makes us responsible for protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The chamber fell quiet as aliens absorbed this idea. Arbiter Kolveth spoke slowly. Dr. Vasquez, are you saying that humans see their capacity for violence as a burden, not an advantage? Exactly, Elena said. Every human child learns that being able to hurt others means you must be very careful not to. We train our young to be strong, so they can protect the weak, not so they can prey on them. She brought up recordings of human martial arts training, military education, and police academies. Look at what we teach: discipline, restraint, protection of others. We do not train killers, we train guardians. Zekthara shook his head. But your history shows humans using violence for conquest, for greed, for power. Yes, Elena admitted. Some humans have failed to live up to our ideals. But watch what happens when they do. She showed recordings of other humans stopping tyrants, fighting against oppression, liberating the enslaved. When some humans choose evil, other humans choose to stop them. We police ourselves because we understand the responsibility that comes with our nature. Council member Thyasa struggled to sit up straighter. Dr. Vasquez, I have a final question. If we allow humanity to join galactic civilization, what guarantee do we have that you will protect us rather than conquer us? Elena looked directly at her. You have my word, but more than that, you have our nature. Yesterday proved that humans will risk our lives to save aliens we barely know. That is who we are. Arbiter Kolveth called for the council to deliberate. Elena waited outside the chamber, pacing nervously despite her injured shoulder. The 3 security guards sat quietly, still processing the fact that their simple act of helping had become the key to humanity's future. When the council reconvened, Kolveth's expression was solemn, but not hostile. Dr. Vasquez, the council has reached a unanimous decision. Elena held her breath. We find that humanity is not a hostile species. You are a protective species. Your capacity for violence stems from your instinct to guard others, not to harm them. This is not a weakness to be feared, but a strength to be valued. Elena felt her knees nearly give way with relief. Furthermore, Kolveth continued, the Council recognizes that our galaxy may face threats in the future. We have been fortunate to live in relative peace, but peace must sometimes be defended. We formally invite humanity to join the Galactic Defense Corps as guardians of all peaceful species. The chamber erupted in approving sounds from dozens of different species. Elena wiped tears from her eyes as she realized that humanity had not just been accepted, they had been honored. And the chamber, endostrim, endostam. Months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the first joint training facility, watching human and alien recruits learning to work together. The humans taught combat skills and tactical thinking. The aliens taught diplomacy and peaceful problem-solving. The Yasa, now fully recovered, joined Elena at the observation window. I misjudged your species terribly, the Zenthari said. I thought your violence made you dangerous. Quote, Elena smiled. Violence can be dangerous. That's exactly why it should only be used to protect others. And that, the Yasa said, is why the galaxy needs guardians like humans. Not because you enjoy fighting, but because you understand when fighting is necessary. Elena watched a human instructor teaching alien cadets how to defend themselves, and an alien diplomat teaching humans how to resolve conflicts without violence. Both lessons were equally important. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as protectors. And for Elena, that felt exactly right.